Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of day that starts with gray skies and a quiet drizzle, the kind of weather that makes you want to stay in bed with a cup of tea and a good book. I was 52, living alone in a cozy little house on Maplewood Lane, a street where everyone knew each other, but no one really knew each other, if that makes sense. We waved, exchanged pleasantries, and occasionally borrowed a cup of sugar, but that was about it. Life was predictable, comfortable, and if I'm being honest, a little lonely. That morning I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring out the window at the rain-soaked garden. My hydrangeas were blooming, their blue petals heavy with water, and the oak tree in the backyard swayed gently in the breeze. I was lost in thought, sipping my chamomile tea, when I heard a knock at the door. Now, I wasn't expecting anyone. My son David was busy with his own life in the city, and my friends were all tied up with their families or work. I hesitated for a moment, then set my cup down and walked to the door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see my neighbor, Mr. Thompson, standing there. He was a tall man in his late 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes. He lived 2 doors down, and we'd exchanged a few words here and there over the years, but nothing more than that. He was holding a small, wrapped package in his hands, and he looked a little nervous, which was unusual for him. "Good morning, Linda," he said, his voice warm but hesitant. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I replied, smiling. "What can I do for you, Mr. Thompson?" "Please call me Henry," he said, returning the smile. I noticed you've been working in your garden a lot lately. You've got quite the green thumb." I chuckled. "Well, it keeps me busy. I find it relaxing." He nodded, then held out the package. "I saw this at the farmer's market over the weekend, and I thought of you. It's nothing much, just a little something to brighten your day." I was taken aback. No one had given me a gift like this in years. I took the package, feeling the weight of it in my hands. "Thank you, Henry. That's very kind of you." He shuffled his feet, looking almost shy. "Well, I'll let you get back to your morning. Have a good day, Linda." "You too," I said, watching as he turned and walked back down the path to the sidewalk. I closed the door and unwrapped the package. Inside was a beautiful ceramic planter, painted with delicate flowers and vines. It was the kind of thing I would have picked out for myself. I ran my fingers over the smooth surface, feeling a strange mix of emotions, gratitude, curiosity, and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. Later that afternoon, I decided to plant a small fern in the planter and place it on my porch. As I worked, I found myself glancing down the street toward Henry's house. I realized I didn't know much about him, other than that he was a widower and had lived on Maplewood Lane for as long as I had. The next day, I baked a batch of oatmeal cookies, my grandmother's recipe, and walked down to Henry's house. When he answered the door, he looked surprised but pleased. "I wanted to thank you for the planter," I said, holding out the plate of cookies. "It was such a thoughtful gift." He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it. Would you like to come in for a cup of coffee?" I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." His house was warm and inviting, with bookshelves lining the walls and a fireplace in the living room. We sat at his kitchen table, sipping coffee and talking about everything from gardening to travel to our favorite books. I was surprised by how easy it was to talk to him, how comfortable I felt in his presence. As I walked home that evening, I realized how much I had missed this kind of connection. It wasn't just the gift or the cookies. It was the way Henry had taken the time to notice me, to see me as more than just the woman who lived 2 doors down. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the unexpected kindness of my neighbor and how it had touched me in a way I hadn't expected. It was a small gesture, but it had opened a door to something new, something I hadn't realized I was missing. The days that followed Henry's unexpected gift felt different somehow, like the world had shifted just a little, revealing colors I hadn't noticed before. The rain cleared and the sun came out, casting a golden glow over Maplewood Lane. My garden seemed to respond to the change, the flowers blooming brighter, the leaves greener. Or maybe it was just me, seeing everything through a new lens. I found myself thinking about Henry more often. Our conversation over coffee had been so easy, so natural. It wasn't just the topics we discussed. It was the way he listened, really listened, as if every word I said mattered. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that kind of connection until it was right there in front of me. A few days later, I was out in the garden, pruning the roses, when I heard footsteps on the sidewalk. I looked up and saw Henry walking toward me, his hands in his pockets and a smile on his face. "Good morning, Linda," he said, stopping at the edge of my yard. "Those roses are stunning. You've got quite the talent." I wiped my hands on my apron and smiled back. "Thank you, Henry. They're my pride and joy. Would you like to come in for a closer look?" He nodded, and I led him through the gate, pointing out the different varieties, the deep reds, the soft pinks, the creamy whites. He listened intently, asking questions and admiring the blooms. "You know," he said after a while, "I've always wanted to have a garden like this, but I've never had the patience for it." I admired your dedication. "It's not as hard as it looks," I replied. "It just takes time and a little love." He chuckled. "Well, maybe you could teach me a thing or two." I hesitated for a moment, then said, "I'd be happy to. Why don't you come by tomorrow morning and we can get started?" His eyes lit up. "I'd like that. Thank you, Linda." The next morning, Henry arrived right on time, wearing a pair of old jeans and a flannel shirt. I handed him a pair of gardening gloves and showed him how to prepare the soil for planting. We worked side by side, talking and laughing as we dug and planted and watered. It was surprisingly fun, and I found myself enjoying his company more than I had expected. As the days turned into weeks, our gardening sessions became a regular thing. We'd meet in the mornings, sometimes at my house, sometimes at his, and work on whatever needed to be done. It wasn't just about the plants, though. It was about the conversations, the shared moments, the growing connection between us. One afternoon, after we'd finished planting a row of tulips in his backyard, Henry suggested we take a break and sit on the porch. He brought out a pitcher of iced tea, and we sat in the shade, sipping our drinks and watching the birds flit around the yard. "You know," he said after a while, "I've lived on this street for over 20 years, and I've never really gotten to know my neighbors. I guess I've always been a bit of a loner." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "I know what you mean. It's easy to get caught up in your own little world and forget there are people right next door." He looked at me, his expression thoughtful. "I'm glad you moved in, Linda. You've made this place feel like home again." His words touched me deeply, and I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you, Henry. That means a lot." We sat in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable silence that doesn't need to be filled with words. The sun was warm on my face, the breeze gentle, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. As the weeks went by, Henry and I grew closer. We started sharing more than just gardening tips. We shared stories about our lives, our families, our dreams. I learned that he had been a teacher before he retired, that he loved jazz music and had a soft spot for old movies. He told me about his late wife, Margaret, and how much he missed her. "She was the love of my life." he said one evening as we sat on my porch, watching the sunset. I never thought I'd find someone who could make me feel that way again. I looked at him, my heart aching for the pain in his voice. I understand. It's hard to lose someone you love. He nodded, his eyes distant. But I think she'd be happy to see me like this, spending time with someone who makes me smile. His words stayed with me long after he'd gone home that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Henry and the unexpected friendship we built. It wasn't something I had planned or expected, but it had become an important part of my life. And as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder where this journey would take us next. Life has a way of testing us, doesn't it? Just when you think you've found your footing, something comes along to shake things up. For Henry and me, that something was a storm, a big one. It was late September, and the weather had been unusually warm for that time of year. The leaves on the trees were just starting to turn, painting the neighborhood in shades of gold and red. Henry and I had been spending more and more time together, not just gardening, but also sharing meals, watching movies, and even taking a few day trips to nearby towns. It felt like we were building something special, something real. But then the storm rolled in. It started as a distant rumble of thunder, a dark line of clouds on the horizon. By evening, the wind had picked up, and the rain was coming down in sheets. I stood at my living room window, watching the trees sway and the rain pound against the glass. The power flickered once, twice, then went out completely, plunging the house into darkness. I fumbled for a flashlight and lit a few candles, trying to make the best of it. But as the storm raged on, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in my chest. Then I heard it, a loud crash, followed by the sound of splintering wood. My heart leaped into my throat. I grabbed my raincoat and flashlight and ran outside, the wind whipping my hair and the rain soaking through my clothes in seconds. I followed the sound to Henry's house, where I saw the source of the noise. A massive oak tree in his backyard had been struck by lightning and had fallen, crashing through part of his roof. My stomach dropped. "Henry!" I shouted, rushing to his front door. I pounded on it, my heart racing. "Henry, are you okay?" The door opened, and there he was, looking shaken but unharmed. "Linda," he said, his voice tight with worry. "I'm fine, but the tree, it came through the roof." I stepped inside, shining my flashlight around. The damage was worse than I'd thought. The tree had smashed through the corner of the living room, sending debris everywhere. Rain was pouring in through the hole in the roof, soaking the carpet and furniture. "We need to get you out of here," I said, grabbing his arm. "It's not safe." He hesitated, looking around at the mess. "But my house—" "Your house can be fixed," I interrupted. "But you can't stay here tonight. Come on, you're coming to my place." He didn't argue. I helped him gather a few essentials, some clothes, his medications, a photo of Margaret, and we hurried back to my house through the driving rain. Once we were inside, I handed him a towel and a dry set of clothes. "Go get changed," I said. "I'll make some tea." By the time he came back downstairs, I had a pot of chamomile tea steeping on the stove and a fire crackling in the fireplace. He sat down on the couch, looking exhausted and overwhelmed. "Thank you, Linda," he said quietly. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come." I handed him a mug of tea and sat down beside him. "You don't have to thank me. That's what friends are for." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm outside and the crackling of the fire. The power was still out, but the candles cast a warm, flickering light that made the room feel cozy despite the chaos outside. You know, Henry said after a while, "This reminds me of a night I spent with Margaret during the hurricane. We were young, just married, and we didn't have much. But we had each other, and that was enough." I smiled, feeling a lump form in my throat. "She sounds like an amazing woman." She was. He said, his voice soft, "And you remind me of her in so many ways." His words caught me off guard, and I felt my cheeks flush. "Henry, I—" He reached over and took my hand, his grip warm and steady. "Linda, I know this might not be the right time, but I need to say it. These past few months with you have meant more to me than I can put into words. You've brought light back into my life, and I don't want to let that go." I looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and vulnerability there. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't from fear or uncertainty. It was from hope. "Henry," I said softly, "you've brought light into my life too. I didn't realize how much I needed someone like you until you came along." He smiled, a slow, warm smile that made my heart swell. "Then maybe we can figure this out together." I nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. Together. The storm raged on outside, but inside, it felt like the sun had come out. We sat there, holding hands and talking late into the night, until the rain finally stopped and the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows. The morning after the storm dawned clear and bright, the kind of day that makes you believe in fresh starts. The air smelled of damp earth and fallen leaves, and the sunlight streaming through my windows felt like a promise. Henry and I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and eating toast with jam, the events of the previous night still fresh in our minds. "I should call the insurance company," Henry said, breaking the comfortable silence. "And maybe a contractor to take a look at the damage." I nodded, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "We'll figure it out, one step at a time." He smiled, his eyes warm with gratitude. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Linda." "You don't have to find out," I replied, smiling back. Over the next few days, we worked together to get Henry's house back in order. The insurance adjuster came and assessed the damage, and a contractor started repairs on the roof. It was a lot of work, but it felt good to be doing something tangible, something that brought us even closer together. One evening, after a long day of cleaning up debris and sorting through damaged belongings, Henry and I sat on my porch, watching the sun set over Maplewood Lane. The sky was a riot of colors, pinks, oranges, and purples blending together in a way that took my breath away. "You know what," Henry said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other night, about figuring this out together." I turned to look at him, my heart skipping a beat. And he took a deep breath, his expression serious but hopeful. "I don't want to waste any more time, Linda. Life's too short, and I've already spent too much of it alone. I want to be with you, if you'll have me." Tears welled up in my eyes, and I blinked them away, not wanting to miss a single moment of this. "Henry, I feel the same way. I've been alone for so long,